Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Saturday to you and yours. You're well into your weekend. Hope you're enjoying it. We got a little special edition, weekend edition of Fearless. Joining me today will be our main man, Morpheus, Royce White, the deepest man on the show. Royce has started his own podcast called Please Call Me Crazy. And so I wanted to bring Royce on. One, there's an issue that I want to talk about that I think is related to the importance of Royce's show. And so I want to combine talking about that issue with telling you and promoting Royce's show and telling you guys how to access it. Royce, thanks for joining me on this Saturday. Appreciate it. And let me just explain to Royce why I want to talk about the Vogue magazine cover that shows Rihanna on the cover, basically leading her baby daddy, A$AP Rocky, and their baby. It's, to me, and they use the word reborn, Rihanna, everything changes. And so I think the religious symbolism is important and is intentional. And, you know, as Christians, as believers, we talk about being reborn in Christ. And I feel like they're trying to send a message about being reborn in this divine feminine energy. But the reason why I think this is important, and Royce, I want to talk about the cover, but I also want to talk about your show. You can tell me if I have the wrong take on your show. But what I see in you, Royce, and this is not a vision where I see Royce as the perfect person, because you're not. You're a fallen man, just like me and everybody else listening to this. But I think you have a chance to tell a story through your own life and the mistakes you've made and the issues you've dealt with, that you can be an example to young men about the natural order, about healthy male masculinity, about being a leader as a man. That's what I'm hoping your show is going to represent. That's what I think you have an opportunity to represent. I've told you off air, and I may have even said it on air. It's like, I see Royce as the next Kevin Samuels, the next iteration of America's version of a better version of Andrew Tate, someone who can reach young men and provide them an example and advice that can lead them down a direction. You won't make some of the mistakes Royce has made, some of the mistakes I've made. That's where I'm hoping when you figure this show completely out, that's where I'm hoping the lane is and how you're seen.
Well, I hope so. Those are two very powerful names in Kevin Samuels and Andrew Tate and some of the other people who have been able to get a younger audience and be able to reach younger people. Our younger people in this country and around the world are the future, and the destiny of our nation and of our society is in young people's hands, and we're at a pivotal moment. So I would really love to be able to reach young people. I think my show is definitely to try and convey through my own personal experience the things that I've been through, the pitfalls and things that I've seen, the curtains that I've seen behind, and this sort of impulse for mainstream media to call people crazy who have ideas that are completely rational and logical, and trying to reconnect young people, hopefully, but all people, to a more rational and logical conversation about any number of issues. And I appreciate all my time here on Fearless doing that. And I hope I can continue that in an even longer format over on my show. And we're off to a good start so far.
What your show, do you plan on doing interviews, or will it mostly be you? What should viewers, listeners expect?
Well, the format right now as it stands is Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 p.m. It'll premiere on YouTube. We also are set for the episodes to premiere on Rumble, although Rumble has some trouble handling such big files. I mean, that's just technical stuff behind the scenes, but the episodes should make their way to Rumble on the same day, in or around the same time as they premiere on YouTube. But I'm following in the leader's footsteps here and premiering on YouTube. I like the funky music they play in the countdown. I'm a child like that still. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Mondays will be more of a deep dive on a given topic. This week I did globalism versus nationalism. Wednesday will be more of a current events and news episode. And Fridays will be our Family and Friends Friday, and we'll try and have a guest or feature a guest every Friday. Today we're actually doing our first guest, on Friday we're doing our first guest, Chris Martinson, who is a good friend of mine and a truther and a fighter himself against the mainstream narrative. So that's kind of the format and the game plan for now. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 p.m. Mondays, deep dive. Wednesdays, current events and news, and Fridays are our guest show.
So this is the end of the second week, I believe. Easier, harder? What have you learned about doing a podcast and perhaps yourself just 2 weeks in?
Well, I mean, I've learned there's so many different ways you could do a podcast. The way we've chosen to do it has all kinds of hidden obstacles that we didn't foresee. But we've been fortunate that in every day that we've premiered the episode, that it's made it up on YouTube on time. YouTube hasn't censored it. It hasn't brought the episode down. We haven't had any hiccups or anything like that with tech. So we've been fortunate so far, I would say, and I hope that we continue to have that success. I'm sure our guest episodes will give us some trouble, as you know, with Skype, but we're doing our best to pre-check, pre-flight check all of those things, so we make the deadlines we need to make. Other than that, it's a whole different format to just monologue for an hour and a half, and that's what I've mostly been doing this first couple of weeks, is just going off on rants for an hour and a half about any given issue. Doesn't trouble me. As I look out into the future, I see a time, and I can see where any type of on-air personality or broadcaster would find themselves venturing into dangerous territory and trying to provide content that entertains instead of that informs. Because at a point when you touch on an issue so much and you get right down to the bone of an issue, I mean, it's hard to say it again, right? In your own head as a commentator, you start to think like, man, I said this before. So in the first week, I found myself a couple of times listening back to the interviews and trying to figure out what I wanted to tell the audience next, and going, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but some of this stuff needs to be repeated because the mainstream media has no problem repeating lies.
Royce, I'm going to keep it real with you. We had a discussion this morning amongst my team. We were all wondering why I hadn't been a guest on your show. We thought that perhaps, by week 2 that I've checked my phone. I've been like, did I accidentally block Royce's number? I mean, I've checked email. I've checked my spam folder. No invitation to be on Royce's show.
Come on. Come on, you're the busy one, man. I told you we want you to be one of the first guests. So look, I got you booked in for next Friday. We'll get you as the second guest of the Family and Friends edition. No problem. Oh, I'm not hiding from you. You know what's funny is when I thought about you being one of the first guests, I started asking myself, man, we've had so many conversations, and I've been on the other end as an interviewee. I don't know what to ask Jason. Like, I don't know where to begin, and so. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go all the way back to the beginning. I wanna have the interview of Jason from the young kid, hour and a half, all the way up to where you are now. So I'm charting that out in my mind. I'm trying to put together an epic interview for the shoes to be reversed for what we usually do.
Yeah, ask me all the questions that other people are afraid to. I would enjoy that. You're a guy that I would go there with. So I wanna talk about Rihanna and A$AP Rocky and the cover of Vogue magazine. It to me, it gets at where we're at in this culture. At every opportunity, popular culture, popular influencers seem to be sending out the message, the black man takes a backseat to the black woman Am I just being overly paranoid, or is the fact Rihanna's worth all this money? She's worth more than ASAP Rocky. He's playing the position he should be playing.
Well, there's a problem with it. I mean, look, the overall culture of Black America is, and I've said this before, and this is much of what your show has tried to highlight, and I think it's one of the most important things that we need to discuss in American culture and politics, because the circumstance of Black America is much greater than your average Black community or what's going on between ASAP Rocky and Rihanna. This cultural narrative about Black people, about Black America, is the railhead, it's the cornerstone of a global agenda. And we've said it before, but it's worth being reiterated. There is a global narrative that came after World War II, and the Jewish identity and the Black identity are central to it. And within the Black identity, or within the Black cultural narrative, women being the head is advantageous for authoritarianism, for totalitarianism, for state surveillance, for a sort of authoritarian dictatorship, a neo-authoritarian dictatorship. And how? Well, yeah, Rihanna may have enough money to support, ASAP Rocky or her family or whatever crew she has around her, and money may not be an issue to them. But the idea that women should lead ultimately is the gateway for the Black identity and freedom to be inextricably linked to the expansion of government. And I know that sounds like a mouthful, but in short, what we're saying is that, or what I'm saying and what many people in this nationalist populist movement are saying is that if women are going to be tied to the expansion of government, then by way of all men are going to be held hostage to a sort of feminine or a feminized version of culture and society. And not just Black women, but Black women first and foremost, because the welfare project and the welfare state rest upon their cultural identity. So yeah, I mean, this whole narrative that's being driven on every ad and every new blockbuster movie that comes out, on the cover of Vogue magazine, you pick a place, doesn't matter, pick a place. The narrative is very succinct. It's very consistent. It's that men should move to the background and let women lead. And that we'll all be safer, or we'll all have more peace if women are allowed to lead. But we see everything but.
I got to be careful how I express this, because I'm referencing two women I absolutely love and adore. And so I don't want to out them, but I'm just going to frame it that way. Two women that one I've known virtually my entire life, and the other one I've known the last 20, 25 years, very successful, very educated, very accomplished. Both of them in marriages, and I know both husbands well. One of the husbands is like a brother to me, and the other is, well, I don't want to out anybody. I was about to say something that would out, but I had one woman tell me that I'm over there for dinner and her husband's there, and she basically just said, if he would, because there's some tension in their relationship, obvious tension, issues, and she says it out in front of him, if he would just be a Stedman, I could carry us, blah, blah, blah. And I told her, I was like, hey, that's the equipment. I said it out in front of everybody, him, her. I was like, you said that, you know how he hears that? He hears that like, if he just bend over and let me shove this broomstick up his rear end, things would be better. I go, that's how that sounds to him. This is crazy. And then another woman, her and her husband were here in Nashville, and we were out to dinner, and we were talking about this whole leadership dynamic, and she just told me like, look, right now, we Black women, we got this. Y'all got to just kick back and let us handle this. We got this. And so there's a real mindset among educated Black women who've had career success. They have convinced themselves they're all Oprah Winfrey, and if we would just fall back, they got this. And it's almost like, y'all blew it, we got this. and there's almost no reasoning with them.
No, this is absolutely absurd. This part of the narrative, there's a dynamic between black men and black women, and there's the family dynamic, but there's also the individual circumstance of the black woman that we can't continue to dance around, and it has historical precedence. And I got to call a little bit of history here, and it wouldn't be a segment of mine if I didn't do so. And I take us back to World War II often because World War II was the turning point of so many things culturally here in America. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again. We tell the story of World War II as though we, the Allied forces, right, the progenitors of democracy and fairness and peace, went there to fight the Axis powers, and we beat the Axis powers, and they were fascists, nationalists, globalists, racists, eugenicists, so on and so forth. But that's not the way. That's a gross misrepresentation of history. It's a gross misrepresentation of World War II, and it's a gross misrepresentation of the three leaders that have come to be the juxtaposition of American democratic liberal order. And that was Adolf Hitler, Tojo, Mussolini. And why I say that is Churchill, Winston Churchill had to come to America and sign away the colonial empire in order to fight off the German war machine. Churchill was on the ropes. Great Britain was on the ropes. And he went to Roosevelt and he said, listen, we need you. We need you or we're not going to win. We're going to fall. And out of a sort of Commonwealth, English Commonwealth sympathy, Roosevelt obliged. But in doing so, Roosevelt made Winston Churchill sign over the claim of their colonial empire. Now, here's what happened. They signed over the claim to their colonial empire. But in effect, what they did was they sent all of their European monarchy philosophers and academics into our universities. People got to understand this. The World War II was fought between two globalist groups. The Allied forces were globalists and the Axis powers were globalists. One group of globalists came out on top. That group, within that group of globalists, the former authority around the world from the crown, the colonial empire, lost some of their stake in the driver's seat. They had to bow down to the United States. They needed that help. But in doing so, the Brits and the crown, they're not idiots. What they did was they sent their European monarch philosophers into our universities to run cover for the rebranding of the crown's business model. And I've said it before, but I'll continue to say it. And I'm going to get to black women in a moment, but this goes all the way back to that war and that history, to the prevailing ideology from universities today. They sent their Marxist philosophers, German, Austrian, the list goes, French, into our universities, and they ran cover for the globalists, the crown, to rebrand its business model of drugs, slavery, and piracy. And the three ways they're covering are social justice, democracy, and environmentalism. And the black woman is the pillar because social justice is the pillar. It's not democracy, it's not environmentalism. Those are an afterthought. Social justice is the central pillar of the three-pillared social justice, democracy, environmentalism that's running cover for the crown. Why do I say they're running cover? Because the business model still exists. All of it's just been modified to meet the narrative of the black woman. That's the reality. That's what's happened. There's still slavery, wage slavery for sure, but there's still actual slavery in some places around the world. Really, we're slaves to the Fed and the monetary policy and the monetary governing bodies like the IMF that are going to bring us a central digital currency. And in collaboration with environmentalism and democracy, they're going to tell you at home, every woman that's on welfare, either you're going to get your child vaccinated or you're not going to get your universal basic income. So there's the slavery. The drugs, it's not cocaine. It's not heroin. It's not sugar like it was in the beginning. It's still some of those things, but now it's morphed. It's grown, progressed into pure dopamine. Social media, here's the dopamine. And democracy has become a corrupt corporate oligarch-run process. So all three have become a bastion of the crown's original business model. And when I say democracy, what I'm saying is we elect officials who create the perception of a consensus, a rational, logical, fair, democratic consensus, but they use it to wage piracy all around the world. That's what they're doing. Slavery, drugs, piracy. We'll go where we want, we'll take what we want. If it's the Ukraine, we'll take the Ukraine. And the black woman has become so disconnected from those historical roots. And how that's taken place is they take the black woman into the university and they prop her up and they tell her hair is pretty. And out of that self-doubt and that insecurity and that history of genuine oppression, that fear of the black man dying from revolting against the slave master, which is a prevalent psychology in the black woman, she stands there and she plays puppet. She plays symbol for these Marxist universities and all these agendas. And the black man at many turns is trying to fight to stand up and say enough is enough. And the entire idea of citizenship from Los Angeles to Beijing is being compromised and undermined under the rubric and fight and dynamic between the black woman and the black man. I know that was long-winded, but that's the reality.
No. Long-winded is not what anybody's thinking here. What they're thinking is like, wow, that's a lot. That's tremendous. It's opening up my mind to because again, you've talked about these things in bits and pieces. And so, that's not long-winded. It takes that long to unpack something that provocative and that profound. And I almost don't want to ask you a follow-up question. I just kind of want you to be like, you got any more you want to add to that'll help us grasp it as we think about it this weekend?
Yeah, well, we'll think about it like this. We have to get away from blame. And when I say blame, I don't mean that nobody on the table has culpability. We all have culpability in this project that's been run on us. And at bottom, the black woman is a convenient target psychologically, culturally, politically, economically, in a history that we all sort of contributed to. And so, the black man at some point in this whole Willie Lynch style psychological experiment should have said, you know what, honey, I love you and I love these kids, but we're not going to live in chains. And I would rather all of us die than to live in chains, right? The price of freedom is death. Malcolm X said it, Thomas Jefferson said it. Two different people in two different times from two different points of view, but came out with the same answer, the same end result. And our American citizenship, our American identity is built upon an idea like this. And along the way, our fear, our lack of faith, our lack of understanding, it led to this sort of neo subjugation that we all live under. And the black woman was just she was just a great tool. She was just the one who stuck out of the bunch, right? She stuck out like a sore thumb. And we propped her up. We all did this. And black men did it too. Remember, it's not just a crisis of femininity. It's a failure of masculinity as well. And first and foremost, it's a failure of masculinity. And then secondarily, it's a crisis of femininity. And much of it has to do with very, very fundamental biological mechanisms that God did give us. And one of them's to reproduce. One of them's to have that sort of sexual lust, right? That appetite for sexual contact and intimacy and companionship. That's a very, very old biological program, and it's being run on us now. And it's not just black men. In effect, this entire feminization of society, of the Western world, of modern society writ large, is to tamper the thread of revolution, because women are slow to revolt. They're slow to violence. They're slow to pick up arms. They're much more agreeable. They're much more amenable. It's easier to convince them to take a deal that they otherwise maybe shouldn't take through rational and logical thought. And that's what women have done, and nobody better than black women. I mean, think about it. In Brazil, to bring in another global example, in Brazil, the President Lula, just announced that in order to get your universal basic income, your Brazil government aid, you got to get your kids vaccinated, right? I mean, that's a deal that no no man, woman, or child with any concept of citizenship should take. But you have to start from saying that we shouldn't take the welfare state as a concept to begin with. So we've been kind of corralled into this shooting gallery, and the black woman is the person who's leading the shepherding. She's saying, no, we have to go in here. We have to get in this shooting gallery. We have to stand over the target. Yeah, X marks the spot, but we need to be here in order to be safe, in order to survive.
I want to end this by bringing it back to Rihanna. And I think this is a profound point in terms of watch the Super Bowl halftime performance, and a lot of the music took me back to when I was younger, and took me back to when I used to hang out in clubs and listen to all that music. And so it had a nostalgic feel to it that on some levels I enjoyed just listening to the music, but I also, clearly she's lip syncing, and clearly she's not that talented of a singer. She's more of a brand and an image than a super talented singer. She's not Whitney Houston. She's not Aretha Franklin. She's not Adele. And Rihanna's a knockoff of Beyonce, who's not super talented, who's, a knockoff of Madonna. And so what I think about when I think about what you're saying in terms of how this is all orchestrated, and they've done it with a lot of it with the music industry and building up influencers and stars, they've eliminated the need for talent, and they just need people that will go along with the program, because they can put the beats, they can get someone else to sing for you, and they've just eliminated the need. In order to be a musical star, you don't have to have real talent. Just look at most of the rappers. Cardi B. I mean, this is not a talented even rapper. And so they've dumbed down the music enough that they can install useful idiots and dummies who will because again, when you have real talent, when you have something to offer, you're far less controllable. And when you don't have real talent, you're far easier to control. And that's, everything you're saying is like, and why they're using the woman and her insecurities, and makes her even more easier to manipulate. It just all makes sense to me that virtually all of these influencers, talentless, insecure, totally beholden to the machine that made them, because I got a buddy, Tech Nine from Kansas City. He's, to me, clearly the most talented rapper of the last 40 years. It's just an amazing, his ability to rap is on such a higher level than 99.9% of the guys that have made it huge in the rap business.
Yep.
But that's intentional. The talented actually don't get put on these pedestals and platforms, and the idiots do.
Well, I mean, first, let me address the first part. You make a profound point with the music. Music is a universal language, and in the choirs, the Catholics, we get a bad rap. But what I like about Catholicism is that it's the one variation of Christianity that goes into depths about the choirs of angels and the principalities and all of the angelology that exists. And in that history, we remember that Satan was in charge of the music, that Satan was a being that was very inept musically. He ran the choirs, the musical choirs in heaven before his fall. And we see that music has that sort of universal power to it, both positively and negatively. And so our music being dumbed down is not a casual thing by any means. And I think you make a great point about the lack of need for real, genuine talent. And what it signals is this sort of digitalization of our society, right? Music is a canary in the coal mine, no pun intended. It's a canary in the coal mine for a digitalized culture. And it does take away the need for real, genuine talent, and it does obscure the value of real, genuine talent. But it's part of a bigger program to socialize sin. And that's what they use music for the most, is the socialization of sin. You know, it used to be if you walked down the street or you hung out at the local bar or you did cocaine or whatever the case may be, you had to deal with the consequences of that sin. And in those consequences, those real world consequences, you had the potential to learn from that and come out of the other side. Many people in the Bible went through many trials and tribulations and were victims of their own sins, and then learned from that, which God put in front of them to learn, and came out to be great people, even came out to be saints and whatnot. We've taken that part away. The digitalization of music is a part of that socialization of sin, and social media is the same way. Right now, you can jerk off. You don't have to go down and actually buy a prostitute and have sex with her and run all of the risks that comes from hanging out in places where you pick up prostitutes, or what happens when you have sex with a prostitute. There used to be something that you could learn from that. There used to be something that you could learn from going down and becoming an alcoholic, or so on and so forth. Now, you got Pornhub, you got Tinder, you got the dopamine of getting red likes on your phone from your social media app. You got musicians and people who have become watered down versions of the idols that we never should have worshipped in the first place, if that makes sense, right? We never should have worshipped Marvin Gaye the way we did in the first place, but at least he actually had talent. At least he actually could sing. At least he actually could play the instruments. He understood the music. We never should have worshipped him the way we did. Now we've started to worship people who can't do 1/10 of what he's done. And in that way, you can see that we're in a dark pit, morally, ethically, culturally.
Royce, once again, we'll end with you telling everybody the details on your show and when they can listen, where they can listen. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, well, thank you, man. Yeah, please call me crazy. It premieres Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 p.m. Central. And Monday, you can expect a deep dive on a given issue. Could be globalism, could be the Fed, could be black women and black men, the black family, Christianity, no telling. On Wednesday, I want to do current events. We do current events and news, just topic by topic. This week we did, this past Wednesday, we did Carrie Lake and the Black National Anthem. I invite anybody to go watch that episode. I was much more animated and passionate than I was in this interview today. Maybe I'm still a little tired from that whole episode. And Friday we do our family and friends and our guests, and I'm excited about all the guests. And I'm getting my interview questions ready for you, Jason, so you can be one of our first guests here to launch the podcast. And I want to tell you, Jason, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, man. Thank you for allowing me to be on Fearless. Please don't not let me come on Fearless as much. I'm going to make as much time for you and the Fearless Army as I need to. The podcast is not going to affect my availability at all. But I really appreciate you. And for all the flack that these pro-black, fake, woke, militant, the Black Anthem is the crying call for liberty and freedom and justice. All of these people sat by and watched when the NBA and the rest of the mainstream media corporatocracy strung me up on a cross for fighting for mental health and called me crazy. And none of them would let me have a platform to speak these very rational and I think very rational and logical thoughts that I have. And I spend a lot of time trying to craft to give people the best insight I can. But when we first hooked up about a year and a half ago, you were willing to give me that platform. And that's why, I'm loyal to the Fearless Army and to you. And I don't care if we disagree on anything. I know where a person's heart is and where their motive is, and all these other black commentators out here that are carrying water for this agenda really need to take a strong look in the mirror. And if you watch my podcast on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, you're going to see me force them to put that mirror up to themselves and ask themselves who they really are deep down.
Thank you, Royce. We'll play some tomorrow. We'll see you guys on Monday.
Freedom, looking for a breakout, feeling like a stand freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom.